This video is about how I plant tomatoes and trellis them. This is a great way to trellis them if you are doing multiple plants, and it's nice in a row. So if you have a row crop and you have multiple plants, or even if you are in a raised bed and you're going to do multiple, I really like using the T-posts and the twine because all I have to store is the T-posts, and they're really easy to tuck the plants into the twine and trim it. So this is why I use this method. So let's get to it. I'm going to show you how I plant tomatoes. The first thing I'm going to do is pinch off all the lower leaves. So then you just leave, I'm going to actually pinch this one off. So you're going to leave the very top and then these two longer leaves. And the reason you do that is because you're going to want to plant the plant real deep, and they grow roots from the stem. And then you're going to make a nice big hole. Use a shovel. And you're going to want to plant them 18 to 24 inches apart. So I'm just going to loosen up the hole. And you want to plant them nice and deep. So that's why I got in there with the shovel, and I'm just loosening it up. And then I'm going to take two big handfuls of compost that I make here. If you want to see how I make this compost, you can check out some of my other videos on compost. So now I'm just mixing it in. And then you want to get, because tomato plants are high feeders, you want to get a good quality organic fertilizer. And I'm just going to sprinkle it in and then mix it. And then I'm going to get in, make sure it's in line, dig the deep hole, because you want to cover most of the plant. I am going to put a handful of eggshells at the bottom, because here sometimes we get blossom end rot and it needs more calcium. So then take the plant out. And I'm going to kind of loosen it up. Plant it nice and deep. So then just pretty much the top is going to be at the surface. Because tomatoes grow roots from their stems. And this will give it a nice, good support. Then I'm going to take another handful of the eggshells that I've ground up pretty fine and put it around there, because this also will help with the slugs and snails. And that's how I plant my tomatoes. So a couple other things, as the plants get bigger, you can make a bowl around here. And I'll probably do that when I start to water, and water in the bowl. And you always water on the surface of the ground when it's dry, never on the leaves. Tomatoes don't like to get wet. I also have a drip irrigation, which is probably the main way that I'll be watering them. And then as also when they get a little bit bigger, I might add some more compost onto the surface. And then I will heavily prune them. and I will show you guys how I'm going to trellis them up. So what I do to trellis the tomatoes, and I learned this way at the farm, and after doing a couple other things here at home, I'm going back to this just because I find it's the easiest. It's less things to store, and it's easy to tuck and prune the tomatoes as they get bigger. And what we do is we get T-posts and put them in a straight line about 8 feet apart. And I would get like the tallest T-posts that you can afford. I think they come like 6 feet or 8 feet, because tomatoes will, get up to, 6-7 feet if you let them. But even if they get up to 4 feet, it's pretty good. So what I start off is I usually count 3 of these little knobs on the T-post. So 1, 2, 3. And we're just going to tie the twine. At the farm, we used to use like a nylon plastic twine. Here I'm using like more of a natural twine. It was too thick or too thin, so I'm just going to double it up. And then we're going to go along and we're going to use the clove hitch knot, and we'll go to the next T-post and I'll show you how I do that. But with this first T-post, I just tie it up like to make the clove hitch. What you do is you make a loop. So I usually put the tail, the opened end, in my right hand, and I make one loop that's in my left hand, and the tail is underneath. And then you make another loop in your right hand where it's open, and you make another loop, and you want the tail at the bottom. And then you're going to take the loop in your right hand and put it over the left one. And so then you've got one loop. You slide it over the T-post, which is always the trick to make sure that you have enough twine that you can go up and over. And then you're going to lower it down. And again, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 of these little knobs, and then you're going to pull it tight. But the first thing what you want to do is get the twine that's going to be from where you're coming from. Pull it real tight, make sure it's looped around, and you loop the loops. And make sure you can get it as tight as possible. And then you kind of help twist the loops around. And the reason why you do this, if some reason this gets cut over here, it won't unravel all the other ones because we're going to go up this T-post. And you can see how nice and tight it is. And it's a really nice strong knot in here. And this is what I've been doing. We did this at the farm. Like I said, we used to use like a nylon twine that the farm suppliers sell. Comes in big spools. Or when we were in the garden, somehow we got some old electrical wire and we used that. So we're going to go along to the next T-post. So one of the things about when you're using the twine and say you run out, you can just tie another piece on like you would, like you're tying your shoe, which was always kind of nice because sometimes you run out and you have to start a new section. So you just tie it like you would a shoe. I'm going to show you one more time. And one of the things you have to do is you come on one side of the T-post and then you go around and you bring it on to the other side of the T-post. But I'm going to show you the knot one more time. So you have the tail end in your right hand and you make one loop with bringing the tail on the bottom, and then that loop goes in your left hand, and then you make another loop with the tail end at the bottom, and then you bring that loop that's over in your right hand on top of the one in the left, and then you slide it over the T-post, bring it down, and you're going to do it right where the string is, but on the other side. And again, if you don't get the loops right, you'll know, because when you come down here to tighten it up, it'll just kind of unravel on you. And that's how you know that you didn't get the knots right. So again, I'm going to pull this string that's on the edge that we're coming from as tight as I can, wrap it around the T-post. This is part of the one on the other side. And then you're going to tighten it all on this other loop. So now if you can see here, you have twine on each side of the T-post. And this is where the tomatoes are going to fit. Sometimes, right now they're too little, but sometimes what I would do is I would get some twine and kind of pinch it here where the tomatoes would kind of sit inside here. And maybe I'll show you that in a later video when these are bigger. But I'm going to come along and I'm going to show you it on this other plant that I have here. So I'm just going to show you here with this kohlrabi. So the plant sits like this in between the twine. And like I said, I would take maybe a smaller piece of twine and kind of pinch it here so it holds it upright. And it's really nice because as these plants get bigger, you can just kind of tuck them in here. And we'll go up the T-posts every 3 little notches to hold them up. So I'm just going to go along and I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's all done. So as you go along here, you can see here's a tomato plant and it's just coming up to the string. And you come along, there's another one, it's in between the strings. Come along, here's the T-post. You can see how it's wrapped around. And you come along. And then here's this kohlrabi that I put in between. And as the tomatoes get bigger, I will put more of the string up. And again, I'll do 1, 2, 3 of these knobs and put the string here. 1, 2, 3, put another string here. So usually I'll have like 4 to 5 rows of the string, and as the tomatoes grow I will tuck them into the twine and also heavily prune them. So I'll make sure, as you can already see, I've taken all the leaves off, that there won't be any leaves here. Now I usually will start leaving the leaves here just because it's pretty dry here, so they don't need that much more airflow. Sometimes you can go a foot up with no leaves to really help with airflow, and sometimes I will do that. Also, I will come and put some mulch just to hold the moisture in. And then again, it's important to only water the tomatoes when the soil is dry. They don't like to be too wet. And then even later in the season when all the tomatoes are on the plant, you can even water them less. Well, this is how I plant and stake up my tomatoes. And tomatoes are my favorite. Thank you.